Crossover events, if done correctly, can be an incredibly satisfying way to tell and consume a story. It's a method of storytelling and marketing that comic book publishers have made use of for years, and while some have been majorly successful both commercially and critically in the past, and others, well, they just did not have what it takes to cut it. So today we are taking a look at some of those from Marvel in particular with our list of the top 10 worst Marvel crossovers. Starting us off in at number 10, Civil War II. While the first Civil War may have been liked by some but disliked by others, most people can agree Civil War II was not a solid follow-up to its predecessor. The crossover was initiated not to continue a Civil War storyline per se, but rather to act as a cross-promotion for the MCU's Captain America Civil War feature film, which was arguably significantly better than this comic book story arc. This time around, the beef is between Iron Man and a different captain, Captain Marvel. An Inhuman with precognitive powers is discovered. Carol Danvers thinks the heroes of Earth should use his powers to predict crimes and prevent them from happening. Tony Stark argues against that, believing that they shouldn't. It's a whole debate between free will and determinism, and it gets messy. A lot of people were bummed that Civil War II basically turned Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel into a fascist-like character, with her even having Miss Marvel Kamala Khan run around with a youth militia. Overall, it was a story arc that was executed poorly despite conceptually having some solid potential. Moving on to number 9, Original Sin. Original Sin is a crossover that has gotten mixed reviews. Some fans really loved it, while others were pretty disappointed. This is particularly because of how the crossover was marketed. Readers thought they were going to get an awesome cosmic murder mystery. The premise of this event is that Uatu the Watcher has been found murdered, and our favorite heroes end up investigating the crime, with Black Panther having his own lead over in Wakanda and the Punisher having a lead of his own, and the Avengers heading on over to the Watcher's base on the moon. It was also predictable. Many readers figured out the story's twist long before it even occurred, making for an anticlimactic conclusion. Some loved it for how weird the whole thing was, and that it did things like explore unlikely pairings like Doctor Strange and the Punisher working together. Throughout the story, some major secrets pertaining to Marvel heroes' lives were revealed, including Tony Stark being involved and Bruce Banner becoming the Hulk while he was drunk, and that Daredevil's mother suffered from paranoia from her postpartum depression and tried to abuse him as a baby, etc, etc. I mean, other secrets weren't as bad, like Lockjaw finding out the location of where he had a bone, so... Moving on to number 8, DC vs. Marvel. DC vs. Marvel is exactly what it sounds like. It's generally a crossover that many have nostalgic feelings for, being a popular one that came out in the 90s. But really, it is just a giant mashup of DC and Marvel characters duking it out, with battle pair-ups that some readers didn't really agree with. I'm sorry, but there is no way that Wolverine would have beaten Lobo. Anywho, the story threading it all together was lackluster, making the crossover feel more like a fantasy fan service attempt rather than something substantial. But one good thing did come out of it, and that is the Amalgam Universe, an alternate reality in which DC and Marvel characters were amalgamated together, like Wolverine and Batman becoming Darkclaw. Their origin stories would be a combination of both characters along with their storylines. Silver linings, people. Silver linings. Moving on to number 7, Age of Ultron. Age of Ultron is a 2013 crossover event, which is very different than the Avengers Age of Ultron MCU film. Do not mistake the two. Joss Whedon just borrowed the name of this comic story arc. It has nothing to do with each other. This story arc takes place across two Earths, 26111 and 61112. The former being an Earth where Morgan Le Fay took over half the world, and the latter being an Earth in which Ultron had annihilated all of humanity. The biggest criticism of this crossover was the fact that it felt more like it belonged as a what-if title rather than an event of its own. Many readers felt that the heroes featured on these alternate Earths, who were trying to survive in Ultron's harsh reality, made flat-out bad or uncharacteristic decisions. And the worst part? Ultron wasn't even really in this series all that much. For an event to be named after a specific character, you'd like to think that they would be one of the main individuals that we'd follow throughout the story, but nope, not the case with this one. In at 6, Axis. The Axis crossover was essentially a massive inversion of all of Marvel's characters, which hit stands in 2014. Long story short, Red Onslaught, who is basically just a psychically OP Red Skull, ends up inverting all of the heroes and villains, making the heroes into baddies and the villains into good guys. While that's a pretty dope premise, it floundered a lot. All of the characters fell into some hardcore trope territory, feeling super two-dimensional rather than actually exploring a complex storyline, or character arcs for that matter. Dr. Doom in particular got got a lot of outrage, becoming a hollowed version of a character that was ripe with potential under a concept like this. Up next at 5, Secret Empire. The famous Captain America is a secret Nazi story arc. Prior to Secret Empire, Marvel released a series called Captain America Steve Rogers, which revealed that the patriotic hero was actually a sleeper agent for Hydra all along. You can see why that pissed people off. Anywho, Secret Empire was the story of Hydra using this fascist Cap to attempt to take over the world, something that had been set up for a long time coming in the Marvel Universe, according to this narrative. It all crumbles though when it's revealed that Hydra Cap is actually an alternate reality Cap and the real 616 Cap was never a Nazi. It felt like a major cop-out just to get sales and media attention, especially being released in 2017, hot off of some major political drama over in the US concerning the rise of neo-Nazis after Trump's election. I mean, comics are historically inspired by socio-political context of the times, ever since newspaper comics were introduced in the late 1980s, so hey, it makes sense. But it still pissed off a lot of people. And at number 4, Heroes Reborn. Heroes Reborn is disliked for 2 major reasons. First off, it was a pretty bad attempt at relaunching some of the titles at Marvel that weren't doing so hot in the sales department, and some of the stories were just not well written whatsoever. The second reason, and perhaps the one that most felt really passionate about, is the fact that the artwork in it is complete garbage. You are probably familiar with the notorious image of Captain America, whose chest is basically a whole shelf. You could put a TV on that thing. It's ridiculous. The artwork was criticized for being incorrectly proportioned and just flat out ugly. But back to the plotline. It was frustrating at best. After everyone was killed off by Onslaught in the 616 universe, it was explained that everyone was then reborn by being transported to a pocket universe created by Franklin Richards, in which the characters' origins and histories were revised and updated for modern audiences. Sales were low, and a lot of the changes that were made were unfavorable amongst fans. And at number 3, Avengers The Crossing. The Crossing is the crossover that threatened to ruin Iron Man completely. It essentially takes his character, makes him into something that nobody recognizes and everyone hated, then basically undoes all of the damage by introducing a younger Tony Stark, killing off the bad Tony Stark, replacing him with the young Tony Stark, all to be retconned out of existence years later. It was dumb. So essentially Tony Stark goes on a rampage after he falls under the influence of Kang the Conqueror, which brings forth an even worse revelation, that Tony Stark has always been under the influence of Kang the Conqueror. Wait a second, where does that sound familiar? Secret Empire? Is that you? Anywho, the Avengers pull teenage Tony Stark out of another reality and use him to defeat Kang Stark. Also, Janet Van Dyne is turned into an actual wasp, and that was weird as f. Up next, number 2, Secret Wars 2. The Secret Wars crossover event was considered a huge success, and many readers feel it is one of Marvel's best crossovers to date, even if it was a crossover whose initial purpose was to solely sell toys to kids. Now, all of that success cannot be said of its follow-up crossover though, Secret Wars 2. It came out shortly after the first Secret Wars the following year, written by Jim Shooter, and plopped our favorite Marvel characters back into conflict with the Beyonder, who is having a whole existential crisis about the meaning of life. The Beyonder ends up on Earth, and is incredibly childlike, learning about human life for the first time. There's even a part of the story where Peter Parker teaches him how to use a bathroom. This childlike Beyonder ends up deciding he wants Earth for himself, which is the product of a massive ego trip, and he ends up getting killed by Molecule Man after he tries to destroy the entire multiverse, and also fails to find enlightenment. Really, it's the Beyonder story rather than a story about Marvel's beloved heroes, and a lot of whining ensued, so yeah, no thanks. And last but not least, in at number 1, Ultimatum. Ultimatum is often considered to be the crossover event that destroyed the Ultimate Universe, both metaphorically and kind of literally. Taking place on Earth 1610, the Ultimate Marvel Universe provided fans with reimagined and modernized versions of the Marvel character roster, which included new origin stories and even some quite unsettling characterizations. It was pretty neat. But in 2004, a lot of the creatives spearheading the Ultimate Universe line of comics departed from it, leaving Marvel editors believing that the only way to keep interest in it and ensure its survival was to do a massive crossover event. In the stories leading up to Ultimatum, there was a whole lot of gratuitous violence and deaths, along with a whole lot of shock value. And the series pretty much ditched everything tonally that made the Ultimate Comics great to begin with. So that miniseries was panned by critics everywhere, and Ultimatum itself was not only a commercial failure, but is also considered by many to be one of the worst comic books of all time. The story killed off 34 characters, and because of its failure, Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Fantastic Four were also cancelled. So what's some of the weird crap that goes on in it? Well, the Blob eats the Wasp, cannibal style. Hank Pym returns the favor by growing in size and then biting the Blob's head off and eating it as well. Doctor Strange's head explodes thanks to him being strangled by his own cape. There's a lot of other crap too that happened before it in the miniseries, but man, I don't think we have time to dive into all of that. It's just nasty. Alright, there we have it, friends. Which of these crossover events do you hate the most? Which ones do you actually like? And which ones did we not include on our list that you think deserved a spot? Give us a shout in those comments below and let us know all of your thoughts and feels. If you dug this video, spread the love, hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd for more videos just like this one. And make sure you hit that bell notification so you never miss another list. In the meantime though, thanks for watching, friends. I'll catch you all in the next video.